Hello and welcome to video 11 in my Modelling in Maya series. At this stage the model is complete, but as she is intended for animation, it would be a good idea to test how she deforms and update the topology where needed. Now we have kept this in mind as we've worked, but it's still worth spending some time to make sure before it's passed on to be textured. Now before we start, how would you like to help shape the future of this channel and keep these videos free? The quickest and easiest way to show support is to hit that thanks button below this video, or alternatively, simply visit my Ko-fi page and treat me to a coffee. Another option is to visit the antCGi store. Here you will find lots of free downloads plus all the course assets and scripts for each of my courses. Finally, you could become a member of the antCGi Club. For a small monthly donation, you will get access to some exclusive rewards and member perks. Just click the join button below to get started. Remember, the more support I get, the more time I can dedicate to creating more high quality content just for you. To get more information on how you can help, follow the link on the screen or in the description below. Okay, let's get on with the video. Here we have the model so far, and as mentioned in the previous video, I have continued to work on her. Now as you can see, although it may be censored to make it YouTube friendly, I have taken her a step further and also added some nipples. This version will be included in the source files for you too. For now though, let's switch to the version we can safely use. Here we go. At the moment the topology looks good, but let's see how the arm deforms. To do this, we're going to create a few joints and skin her. These are only temporary, so there isn't any point in going into details about joint orientations and rotation orders. If you do want to explore joints more, you can check out some of the other videos I have on rigging. In these, I go into a lot more detail. So to start, I'm going to switch to the rigging shelf and double-click the Create Joints tool to open the options. Don't worry about all these options for now. Let's enable X-ray joints so we can see them even when they are inside the model. Actually, let's turn on X-ray mode too. So the only option I'm going to enable is projected centering. This will attempt to work out where the middle point of the model is, which is a great time saver. All we need to do now is start placing joints. Oh, where is it? It would help if I had joints visible. Here we go. Let's show the model's wireframe too, which will help guide us. We need the next joint to be roughly where the elbow is. And the last one at the wrist. We just press Enter now to exit the tool. We can now rotate the joints and they will eventually affect the model. Let's check the elbow too. So by default, Maya has orientated the joints for us, so that's good and we don't need to worry about them. We do need another joint though, before we bind the model. I'll disable projected centering. And what we want is sort of an anchor joint. We want this extra joint so the body can be weighted to it, otherwise the whole model will just move with the shoulder joint. I'll hold X and snap it to the middle of the scene. And move it up. Finally, parent the shoulder joint to it. That's all we need to do now for the skeleton. So select the root joint and then add the model. And go to Skin, Bind Skin and open the options. I'm just going to reset the settings here. Actually, I'll switch weight distribution to neighbours, just because it makes painting weights more predictable. Let's apply that, and close the window. You can see the joints have changed colour now, which indicates they are skinned. If I rotate the shoulder joint now, you can see the model is skinned, but she also doesn't look right. The same happens when rotating the elbow. Now there are ways to get better default skinning, But for what we need, this is a good starting point. Again, this is all covered in my rigging courses. What we need to do next is tell the model which vertices should be affected by what joint. And this is what's called painting weights, because we're effectively painting on the weight values of each joint. Okay, let's stabilise the body first. It's always best to paint weights when the model is actually deformed, so you can see how it's looking as you work. Let's raise the shoulder, select the model, and open the Paint Skin Weights tool. What you can see now is a grayscale representation of the influence the first joint has on the model. So the darker areas have less of an influence. As we select the different joints in the list, we can see each one's influence. Let's lock down the body first. So select the first joint. I'll expand this so we can see all the options. All we need is to make sure paint operation is set to replace. Use the hard brush profile, and we want opacity and value to be set to 1. Value is the maximum weight value that each brushstroke will apply, whereas opacity allows you to adjust that value. We just want the vertices we paint to be influenced fully by the root joint. Now, as we paint on the model, the vertices are snapping back to the root joint. We can drop out of smooth mesh to make things easier. Sometimes the vertices are far away, so dropping down makes it easier to find them. Actually, we could just flood the model instead, which will set all the vertices to follow the root joint. This might be easier, seeing as we are focusing on just the arm. Now let's select the next joint, which is the shoulder, and paint its influence on the model. We may as well do the whole arm and work our way down. To make this easier, we could instead select the arm vertices. What this does is restricts the work we do to the selected vertices. And go back to the Paint Skin Weights tool, and we can use Flood again. All we need to do now is tidy up the shoulder. We can switch the operation to smooth now, so we can blend that influence in. Okay, now the elbow. So first, let's pose it. We might as well do the hand too. Again, select the vertices of the lower arm. And make sure we switch back to replace, and flood again. Now let's reduce the vertex selection, and weight those to the hand joint. Now those are all weighted, we can go in and do a quick cleanup with the smooth operation. Okay, looking good so far. Let's reset the arm. We can right click on a joint and go to Assume Preferred Angle to do this. So let's have a look at the shoulder. This area looks okay so far. With the twist rotation, this won't fully affect the shoulder. Instead, there will be a twist or roll joint around the bicep area. Let's enable smooth mesh again. The shoulder is looking a bit flat, but I'm pretty sure this is just a weighting issue. You can adjust the value attribute to give you lighter strokes. We can just fill this out a little more. So we have the muscle moving up and over here. Just smooth that off a little bit. Remember that this is just temporary, so it will look better when properly rigged. So it's looking good in this area. Let's check the elbow next. So straight away I can see that it's not giving us the correct shape. We do need more of an angle here. This can be achieved with some corrective shapes or joints though. Let's see what we can do with the weighting. We can add more of an influence on the elbow, to pull it out here, soften here, so that looks better. Not perfect, but like I said, it could use a corrective shape to get the elbow looking right. What if we pull the weighting back a little? Yeah, I think the topology is okay, so it would need something extra in the rig. Let's check the wrist now. Like the shoulder, the twist will be offset to a joint in the middle of the forearm, so the wrist won't deform like this. What does concern me here though is the topology. Ideally, we need this area to be cleaner, so we want edge loops running across the wrist. This will make the area deform better, and it will also be easier to rig. At the moment, we would likely end up with some deformation issues in this area. I just spotted an n-gon here. Let's quickly fix that. I'll enable symmetry first, so we do both sides. And set it to topology. That's better. So now I'm going to rework the topology around the wrist. So I'll speed things up as I do this. And yes, you can do it on a model that is skinned. Okay, so that's better. Now we need to clean the model and get rid of all the history. I'll show the joints again. All we need to do is go to Delete by Type Non-Deformer History. This will just bake out all that history that we've added in, but keep the skin cluster, so it will keep the skin weights. Now that's clean, let's check the wrist again. We need to update the weights first. Add more influence back to the elbow joint. So we can get more of a crease now. And it's more even. Okay, so let's say the arm is done and we are happy. We need to detach the model from the skeleton. So we select it and go to Skin, Unbind Skin. There are a few options here. Delete History will simply remove the skin cluster, so the weighting information will be removed. Keep History retains the skin cluster details, just in case you wanted to skin the model again and keep the work you have done. Finally, Bake History will delete the skin cluster, but bake the pose into the model. For us, we just want to delete the history. If we click Detach, the model goes back to its default pose. So now we can delete the skeleton, and when the rest of the model has been checked, and we are happy with the topology, this can be passed on to be UV mapped and textured. What I want to do now is skip ahead and add a full skeleton for you to play with, so you can see how everything works together. Here we are back with the model, and this scene will also be part of the source files which you can download from the antCGi store. If I enable X-ray joints, we can see the skeleton. I've also worked my way around and painted the skin weights for you, just so you can move her and see how she deforms. Now, I'm not expecting you to go to this level when you're testing your models, but it does help to have a good idea of key areas. Let's turn on her wireframe and switch to default lighting. Let's look at her eyes first. As I rotate the eyelid, the geometry moves down, but it's a little flat. Ideally, we need more edge loops in her eyelids so we can get a better curve as they move over her eye. Let me switch to another model which is in the scene, one which I already updated. So this has more topology in the eyelids, and we can use this to add more of a curve as the eye closes. Now there isn't much of a curve here, but this would be added as part of the rigging process. But having these extra loops means it can be added quite easily. This will also help the eye move over the cornea too, so it's not popping through. Let's just reset that joint and switch back to the older model. Let's check the elbow now. Oops, select the right joint. So we can see this isn't deforming very well, and this could be helped with some corrective shapes. But reworking the topology would be much better. If I switch to the updated model, you can see the topology is much neater. So this area deforms better. And both these models have the same weighting applied to them. They aren't different. Okay, let's switch models. And let's look at the hip. We can see here along the crease that an edge would have been better placed here, across this quad. Now it's not a game changer in this instance, and you could get away with this. If we look at the model I updated and compare, this bends a little better and the crease is more natural. Although there is this quad here that I missed, so this will need changing to remove the pole. Again, switch to the old model and let's focus on the ankle. So you see here we have a similar issue to the wrist. The edges don't flow around the ankle. They come from the front of it and down to the heel. This could make this area deform in a strange way. If I switch back, you can see I changed the edge flow, so it's now around the ankle, so the crease is in a better place. So you see that there is more to consider when building a model for animation, and it's a good idea to keep things like edge flow in mind. With her face, we already followed natural muscle lines, so I'm confident she will deform well. But we will look at that more in a minute. So it's just a case of working your way around and seeing how everything moves, making sure there are no surface artifacts, pinching, or unnatural creases. Now, one of the best ways to check how a model deforms is to rig it. So I've gone ahead and rigged her for you. Being able to see how the animators will be using her is priceless, and it's easy enough to update the topology and reskin a model. So it may be an option that you pass the model on to a person who is rigging it, and then they can send it back when done, so you can then check and update it. Once you've updated it, they can simply just reskin it. This is also good for testing facial expressions too. Like here. I've added in some basics for you, but these are joint based, so we can swap out the model. It's important to add that blend shapes will break and probably need to be redone, so for testing purposes, I would recommend just using joints. Let's look at the wireframe. Maybe open her jaw. So you see the edges are flowing around and under her mouth. Finally, throwing some animation onto the rig will highlight any problem areas too. Here I've worked on 3 key animations to see how the model holds up. First we have a walk cycle. And remember, these animations are just basic and meant to test the model, so they aren't perfect. We can see the model is deforming well. If we check her back, Her shoulder blades are moving nicely too, and these don't have any extra controls in, it's just down to the way we built the model. And let's check the wireframe. Let's look at the jog now, which is a bit more extreme. Looking good so far. Nothing leaping out at me. Her knees do need some work though, so they deform better. But a lot of the issues I can see won't be fixed with this basic rig. We do need some corrective shapes and joints adding, so when the knee bends, the shape changes to make it look more natural. The same with her elbows too. Oh, and her buttocks. Something to think about, and I will go over this in a future course. Finally, we have a run, which takes the movement even further. What you may find is most companies use a range of motion file, which is basically an animation file with different poses on each frame, ranging from simple movements to more extreme. The rig is then referenced into this, and then you can see how it deforms and how the model holds up. So you get the idea. Building the model is one thing, but you also need to factor in time to test how she will move, and you may not have a skeleton or a rig, or even any animations to use, and that's fine. You can always go in and bend the limbs manually. Okay, so we are now at the end of the main part of this modelling in Maya course. I've walked you through my process for building a female base mesh, and I hope it's been useful, and you've picked up some tips along the way. As mentioned, you can download the source files, which include the models, skeleton file, rig, and animations from the antCGi store. This not only helps you follow the course, but it also helps to support this channel and give me time to record more workshops for you. Before we finish, I want to do one more thing. We have the model, so in the next bonus video, let's look at UV mapping her so she is ready to be textured. Okay, that's another video over. Thanks for watching right to the end, and make sure you also check out some of the other free videos and courses I have available. If you have any questions, please post them in the antCGi community Discord server. That's the best place to reach me, and if I'm not available, there are plenty of other talented people around to help. Remember, to help support future content and keep these videos free, hit the thanks button below, visit the antCGi store, or join the antCGi club. You can also treat me to a coffee at my coffee page. The link is on the screen now and in the description below. Thanks again for watching. This is antCGi signing off, and I will see you on the next one.